Kia ora, g'day. Welcome back once again. Here with, I think this is part 5 of my reaction to this gentleman, John Stryker Meyer, on the Sean Ryan Show, former MACV SOG, talking about the secret war in Vietnam. So let's jump back in.
All part of the training. He even trained our team so that a helicopter would come in. If we'd be pretending that we're in a firefight, the helicopter would come in, and with the H-34s, when the indigs would get in the helicopter first, one would go to the window on the left side, and another would go to the window behind the door. So that would give us increased firepower on both sides, and then everybody else would get in the helicopter. And then you just, every kind of training you could think of. And we just went down to the range, put thousands and thousands of rounds down range. And that was part of the training up Idaho, ST Idaho, FUBI FOB1.
Just makes me smile thinking of when he says put thousands and thousands of rounds down range. Just those times, more so for once I was in the unit, having the opportunity to get to the range and just throw a lot of lead down range for the purpose, with intention, right, of trying to improve and get better. But some really good times, some hard case conversations, some competition and stuff as well, but good memories.
And, Johnny Mac he had the first mission. He went out and they had a team, they inserted an elephant grass, and they had a lieutenant who was a team leader. And he jumped out of the helicopter before its wheels, because elephant grass can be anywhere from like 8 to 12, 13 feet tall. And Spider told us, when you're in elephant grass, wait till you see the ground. Do not jump. You can't see the ground because you might hurt yourself. Well, this young lieutenant didn't listen to Spider, jumped out and broke his ankle. So they were compromised. And because Mac was new on the team, they decided to pull the whole team out. When they came back, they made contact before they came in with the helicopter to pick them up. And Mac came back because, holy shit, Joe, you should have seen this firefight. Said, these NVA are serious out here. And they came back, put the lieutenant, and then on the 4th of July, John was working with his web gear, and he cut through the web gear, and it hit a bedpost. It ricocheted up and came back, cut him through the lower through the eye, and through his up here on his lid. And
oh heck!
It was like he came out, and the medics said, "We got to take you down to the Marines." And they took him to the closest medical facility, and they passed him up a little bit. They said, "We'll let it sit overnight because we got a 4th of July party going on tonight." And during that night, the infection set in. And they took John back, and we never saw John again until we got back in the States. He was medevac. That was like my best buddy went down.
Damn.
Right? Just like.
Far out. Not in combat. Sounds like he was working on his webbing, cut, hit the bedpost, ricocheted back up, and oh man. And then a party's too important, so they let it sit, and then the infection gets in. What a crap way to go out or be removed out of the conflict.
Like on an accident, so trivial, horrible.
Let's talk about your very first mission with SOG.
Well, the first 3 are kind of boring, really. They're very successful, minimal gunfire.
What was the mission?
That's all right, though. I suppose, depending on what you're after, and probably based on what they may have been seeing, may have been hearing, he was probably expecting to be involved in a whole bunch of gunfights from his first task all the way through. But I think he said his first 2 or 3 weren't that exciting, pretty boring. But when you're working, my take anyway, for most tasks, unless you're doing a DA, a deliberate action, and or you're hunting specifically, large majority of your tasks and jobs in that SF space. You want to go undetected. You want to go without having big, massive firefights because you're such a small team.
They were to insert Air Force sensors. And by August and September, we had the monsoons that were going on. So when the weather would break, we would try to run as many missions. So we had trained up. The Air Force had a 3-part sensor. They had a central unit with an antenna on it. And then it had a coaxial cable that ran for several feet. And then each unit, everything had to be buried with only the antennas behind vegetation. And so the first one we put in was in the Ashall Valley, which was at that time, we had 3 Green Beret camps in the Ashall Valley that were further south of where we went into this trail. And each A camp had been overrun. Just the NVA said, this is our territory. They ran those A camps out. And there's a great book out that's called Ashall Valley. And it just talks about that camp. So each of those 3 camps are overrun and pushed out. We knew that history. We go in. Spider was the 1-0. We took an E8 with us from S3 who was familiar with the equipment. And we had another 1-0, very experienced, Les Daniels from Spike Team Rhode Island. And so because Don and I were new, the plan was we would go in and Don would take some people to the north end and I would take a couple of guys to the south end of where they were operating, and they would all install those monitoring devices. So we were on the ground a few hours, and this was the Ashall, and we knew the Ashall by that time. We had heard about it, and it had these huge punji pits. There had been a lot of rain. The monsoons had washed away some of the cover for these punji pits. Some were as big for animals, but there were smaller ones. And as we were coming back, Don and I were walking past one of those punji pits, and he slipped and started to fall into the punji pit. And I grabbed him. I said, "Get back here! I'm not ready to be the 1-1 yet. I'm just a radio operator here." We came back. We got pulled out. We were working. The first cab did the insertions and the extraction on that, and they thought we were going to get hit hard being in the valley. Nothing happened. And we had TAC air stacked up. So when we left, the 51 caliber opened up on the east side of the Ashall. Well, they hit that thing with napalm. They hit him with a gun run. They wiped that 51 caliber out several times. But we didn't get shot at. And then in September, we did the same thing. We had another mission. We inserted the same device, but this time it was just our team, Spider, Don, and I. We went up.
What was the device doing?
It was monitoring anything on traffic. Anything that went by, they could tell from the vibrations what it was, whether it was people, animals, or trucks, or tanks. And so they would record, and then the Air Force would come by.
Amazing. Just the technology even for that time and what these guys are going out there doing, inserting in those different areas, and the information and intelligence they must have been able to gather and then communicate on and then build their plans and stuff around that in terms of what they were going to do in those areas or how they would attack them or whatever. Man, crazy. Sounds like just a 3-man team. I wonder if that's how... No, surely it was. Maybe they just bolstered up their numbers as and when they needed to, depending on the task. But 3 of them out there. I think he said just his team this time, and he only mentioned 3 people.
And electronically pick up the intel from that central command box we put in.
Gotcha.
That's what we're told. Now, I'm just like the low man on the totem pole here. So my job was, you're going to be security. You're going to go here. You see bad guys, kill them. And if we need help, you'll be on the radio. Call TAC Air. That was my job. So I don't anything beyond the specifics. And then the second one, Don and Spider did the insertion with Sal and HEP. They did the insertion, but I was still overseeing possible TAC Air if we needed it and security for one of the perimeters. But it was right next to the Quezon Marine Corps base there. It was one of the main roads that went past Quezon.
What were you carrying?
For weapons?
What was your loadout?
I had a Car 15, which was a modified M16. had a shorter barrel, and then it had the first collapsible stock. And I loved it. It was a great weapon. And that's what I carried the whole time. So in the beginning, I was only carrying maybe 500 rounds, plus hand grenades. And by by August, we had developed sawed-off M79s. We cut the handle down as much as we could. Just to
M79. I think from memory, that was like the grenade launcher, 40 millimeter grenade launcher. Or that's what I remember anyway. I might be off, but M79. I think that's what it was.
we had enough to hold it. And then we cut the barrel back as close as we could to the end where the wood comes out of the platform that holds the metal barrel. Cut it right to that. And then we trained up on that because it was just extra firepower. So we always carry 10 to 12 rounds for that, 10 to 12.
Must be the 40 millimeter. And they've gone and modified it and shortened it. Wow. Interesting.
Hand grenades, smoke grenades. We had both large and small smoke grenades. And then in the beginning, I said like around 500 rounds. And then Spider and Don and other teams, like I talked to John Walton, who had been on another team, and they had a couple of missions where they barely got out alive. And they ran out of bullets. And so I then carried over 600 rounds. And we had only 20-round magazine, no 30-round magazine like today. So you had 20-round magazine, but only 18, because we were told that if you had too many, the spring would not work. It may not feed them correctly. So
We're still being told that when I went through basic training in New Zealand. So 30-round magazines, we'd put in 28 rounds. We weren't told that same thing. We were just told to help ease some of the strain that the springs would be under. But you know, if that's what they were told, I don't remember being told that. We're just told around don't fully load or don't fully bomb the magazines up to its capacity. Just leave a couple of rounds off. So 28 rounds was the standard. Some guys I remember doing 27. Some guys did. There was some guys that I worked with that ended up being that were a little bit superstitious. So they had numbers that they liked to run with, but more often than not, it wasn't at full capacity. It was either 1 round short or 2 rounds shy of those mags being fully loaded up.
So we had the old BAR web gear, had nice shoulder pads, had pouches. The pouches could hold 3 or 4 magazines, and then one on top. And then we had electric tape on them. And so that's what we trained in. Just how to get those things out, swap them out as fast as you could. And
what about a secondary?
Say again?
Secondary pistol?
No, we had the sawed-off M79. We always carried either double-odd buck or flechettes because I didn't carry a pistol. Because most of the times we were so efficient at the quick magazine change that if we were caught in a situation where they charged us and we didn't have a magazine, we still had the flechettes and that double-odd buck with the M40 with the M79. That was just devastating stuff. And then later, some of our guys messed around. They began putting flechettes in them.
What is a flechette?
Like a small dart. And so when they would come out, be just like a small pair of these darts and just kill anything in its range within. And again, it's close, like a super big shotgun, you know.
Blade?
Yep. They developed some of those. Now, again, I'm told this. What I personally had, we always had a double-odd buck, and Doug and Lynn Black, a couple of these other, they were all the weapons guys. They were always tinkering with these things to improve them. And they'd had those flechettes that they personally designed. They would carry a couple because if you needed it, that first round would slow down anything coming at you.
Knife, I mean.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a SOG knife, specially designed. We had our own supply system. CISO was based out of Okinawa. And early on, they were set up so any supplies that went to 5th Special Forces Group and SOG, sometimes things would go to the agency for weapons that they needed them. And
man, I just think of hearing the term the agency during all that time in Vietnam, etc., and no doubt other places where they've been. But it almost sounds like, not that I know, and I haven't had any interactions and I haven't spoken with anybody personally that was from the agency or people that work specifically with the agency. But when I hear bits and pieces about it, and even just in this interview, it sounds almost like sort of like the Wild West type. That's what I imagine. These CIA agents roaming around out in the jungle, in the bush, doing whatever it is that they do, working with these guys, with the SOG teams, MACV SOG teams, running these secret missions. Crazy, hectic, but also really super interesting. It's just, it'd be cool to hear more and learn more about the sort of stuff that they were up to. And maybe Sean's done some interviews and stuff on that, and I just haven't come across them yet.
They developed what was called a SOG knife. And when I went through my end processing with S4, got the web gear and everything, I got my SOG knife. And so we always carried that right on the web gear, on the shoulder straps, had the SOG knife right there, upside down. So if you pulled it out, it's ready to go. Whereas if you're in the jungle, sometimes reaching out might be a little bit too difficult. But down here, you can pull it out quickly. So that's where the SOG knife would go, Car 15, magazine pouches, hand grenades. We always had to take a gas mask with us. And then we had, after the second insertion of the Air Force sensors, we had a mission in the Ashall Valley, but it was on the east side of the Ashall. And Spider Parks at that time said, we're just going to do a practice mission. Our team's going to go in, another recon team's going to go in, we're going to do parallel movements, and if we make enemy contact, we're going to have TAC air stacked up, and we just want our team to get used to the new team. So we went out, made no contact, but the second night we were on the ground, we were in an area heavily infested with mosquitoes. And in the morning, because I had a night watch up till about midnight or...
Bloody wonder if they got much, or they must have been worried about dengue fever and malaria and all sorts of stuff with heavily infested swamp mosquito areas, swamp areas with mozzies.
1 o'clock. But I fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, mosquitoes had bitten my face so much I could barely open my eyes. I poured water on them and everything else just to get my face like all puff face from those damn mosquitoes. I've never seen anything like it. But the other team was so good, they ambushed a Pathet Lao ambush that was set up for them. And the Pathet Lao was the Laotian version of the Viet Cong, but they weren't as good as the Viet Cong. And we didn't come into contact with them too often, but this other team ambushed them. So we got pulled out, and Spider got promoted to Covey Rider. And Covey was our forward air controller, and Covey was the code name for our fax. So it was the Air Force 02 at that time, a Cessna push-pull, engine in the front, engine in the back, and a Spider would be the Covey Rider. And the way that was designed was he always had a Covey Rider who had experience on the ground, so that when a team made enemy contact, the Covey Rider could fill in the pilot as well as the team on the ground and talk to them through experience. And so one of our greatest learning centers for us was in the clubhouse. All the guys that would come back from a mission, they would talk to us. And there's a few senior NCOs like Spider Parks, Pat Watkins, John McGovern. They would all answer any questions we had. And when a recon team would come back from a mission, we would definitely talk to them if they would talk to us.
Man, that's awesome. That must have been, for them to be in that environment, to hear these guys when they come back, not to boast or brag, but to get that intelligence to help them, I'm assuming, to help them and their team and or the next team that would potentially be going out on the next task or on a future task in the same area or similar areas close by, neighboring areas. That must have been invaluable for them to help them with their preparations. Likely doesn't guarantee anything, but gives them a little bit more ground knowledge, how the enemy's likely to respond, some of the tactics that they're employing, what some of their numbers are like, or what they were like, and what they could potentially ramp their numbers up to. There's a whole bunch of information and intelligence that these guys would have benefited from, I'd imagine, from hearing these guys come back from their tasks. So yeah, it's interesting because I don't recall. I remember there being a lot of isolation with regards to even just training and preparing before going out on a task, but being isolated, different areas of operation, understandably, getting key, I suppose, objectives, mission sets. There may be some crossover and similarity, but I don't recall coming back and then talking with the other team. So if I use East Timor as an example, Recce Platoon, we went out, did tasks, come back, go out for might be 5 to 10 days at a time, maybe a little bit longer, maybe less, maybe 24, 48 hours, or only 72 hours. So anywhere from real short duration QRF immediate action to longer duration tasks and middle duration tasks, and then coming back. Doing lots of those, rotating in and out, but I don't recall us ever speaking with the other patrols in the other areas, speaking about the areas that they went to, what did they observe, etc. Now, it was pretty much peacetime when we went through, but we were actually going into areas where we could have potentially, and where we were expecting to be bumped and get into a contact or two whilst we're on those deployments. But it didn't happen, which is great. But it's also, listening to this guy speak, I also don't recall us sort of getting together, or maybe the patrol commanders were talking about stuff, but I don't remember information being filtered down to us as the boots on the ground going out for another task or a mission or whatever. So yeah, that's why what he's talking about stands out to me. It's great that that's what was happening. I don't know if that still happens today. I'd like to think that there's lots of communication talking about what's been seen and what could be learnt and what they could apply or how they could be better prepared when they're going out. So,
and that's how I got to know John Walton. John was an SF medic, and he was just an outstanding guy. And we met. It's one of those deals where, what does your dad do? Well, my dad's a milkman back in Trenton, New Jersey. What does your dad do? He's got a 5 and dime store. He's running with his brother up in Bentonville, Arkansas. So what the hell's Bentonville? And we teased him more and more about Bentonville than we should have. But John was a good sport about it. So I got to know John, and he had run a mission where they were TDY down in Cambodia. They got put into a target. And it's supposed to be a 2-day mission, but it stretched out to 5. They ran out of water, ran out of food. And he came back. They were in a really nasty jungle, some kind of growth, but his arms came back all cut up. His pants and everything were torn to shreds from the thorns and stuff. And they made contact. And what I remember most was John talked about it. He talked about every little thing. And that's when we began to talk. We bonded our friendship all. We played poker together a lot. John was a phenomenal poker player. And so that relationship grew with him and the other guys. Whenever a team came back after a mission, if they would talk about it, we'd talk about it to see if we could learn anything off of it. So I went through those 3 missions.
Why wouldn't they talk about it?
Well, some guys were just, we had one team that came in, they had an inexperienced radio operator that called in a gun run on his own team. Killed 2, wounded a couple others. And
man, even if that happened, you'd still want to, I wasn't there, wasn't part of that, but there's some learning there to share and pass on to those other teams, man. You'd hate for that to happen. You'd hate for your radio guy to do something like that. And there could be any number of things, but yeah, I suppose I could, to a degree, imagine that maybe there's operational security reasons for it. Maybe there's just, maybe that this is part of what he was talking about. Maybe they didn't want to talk about it, being due to being embarrassed about something or whatever. Who knows? But anyway, let's carry on with this and just hear some of the reasons why.
Sometimes things like that you just don't want to talk about.
Gotcha.
So we had August the 3rd, 1968, John Walton's team, which was Spike Team Louisiana. They were into a target on the ground a couple hours. They got overrun by the NVA. And in between times, there was one time where John was sitting there, and to his left was an indigenous soldier, one of the South Vietnamese. John was left-handed, so his car 15 was pointed this direction, and he heard a noise. He looked over his shoulder, and there was an NVA that popped up out of the jungle with a big Cheshire grin on his face. He stood up with his AK, and John saw him. He's coming around. This guy opened fire with his AK, put 4 rounds into the South Vietnamese, and was shooting at John, but John killed him, blew him back into the jungle. So John began to do first aid, patch up a South Vietnamese. This thing went on. They got overrun a second time. And on the last time they were getting overrun, the team leader called in a gun run on the team itself. And the A1 Skyraider made a 20 millimeter gun run across the team. The rounds killed one of the South Vietnamese team members. And the second with Tom was Tom Cunningham, who was the radio operator. He came into camp on Sunday or Monday. This was Saturday, August the 3rd, 68. And the gun run, 120 Mike round, hit his radio, his Prick 25, PRC 25 FM radio. The shrapnel exploded, wounding the team leader. The second round hit his leg and took off his leg, and he was flying through the air. He had an out-of-body experience, seeing himself flying through the air with his leg dangling by sinew. And he landed, he called his name out, and then he returned to his body. And within seconds, John was there, began to patch him up. He passed up the team leader who had been severely wounded also. And they called in airstrikes. First helicopter comes in, Captain Tin, who was the same captain that we talked about a little earlier. Tin comes in, picks up Pete Boggs, Tom Cunningham, and the South Vietnamese who's wounded. The team member who was dead, they left him at the LZ. Because it's August, they're in high Laotian mountains. He could only take 3. So he took off. Second King Bee came in and got shot out. The third King Bee attempted to come in and got shot out. Well, Captain Tin heard this. He turned around and came back and landed and picked up John, who was on the ground with the South Vietnamese. And he could see the NVA coming up there. They're going, shooting in with their M79, Car 15s, and John told the Cubby Rider, if you don't get us now, we're dead. Captain Tin comes in. Now the H-34 is too heavy to take off. He had the struts on the side, so the wheels. He lifted it up, gets running downhill, all while under enemy fire. Had enough lift just to get over the treetops, but not enough transitional lift to leave. He dips down into the valley, did 2 or 3 laps in the valley, get up speed, all while under enemy fire, then takes off and comes back to the base. They went right to the medical center, and even there, when they go into the medical center, John goes in, they roll in. Pete Boggs was the team leader. They roll Tom in, and they put the third stretcher. John puts the indig on the stretcher. They're going in.
Holy heck. Sorry, I just got to pause this here. That's an incredible story, but just got to acknowledge the pilot. Turning around, coming back, picking them up. They're now overweight. The backside's too heavy to get up and, or just enough to clear the tree line, but not enough to get away or whatever. He's building up speed, all under heavy enemy fire. And to get these troops back, far out. Phenomenal. Hopefully, not that that's why he would have done it, the pilot, but hopefully that pilot got the recognition that he deserves. Not only from, I'm sure he would have been happy just with the acknowledgement from the soldiers that he saved, but man, that deserves more than just a pat on the back, eh? Like, hey, good job, mate. Far out. That's nearly 30 minutes. I'm going to wrap this one up here, and I'll come back to this later on. But geez, this guy's got some stories of things that he's heard about, and not surprising, if that's what they were doing, the guys that would come back and talking about what they had just been through, and a number of those guys in those teams being close friends of his. So the learning for them must have been through the roof in terms of just hearing what they'd been through and digesting that and being able to take that and go, well, this is what I think we can and we should do based on what's been happening and or based on any trends that they might have been observing. But anyway, man, I could talk about this for ages, just listening to this guy sharing some of the experiences that he's been through and that of his friends, his colleagues. But I'll leave this here and just thank you all again for any time that you've spent here. Much appreciated. And yeah, that being said, as always, the message is the same, eh? Regardless of your challenges, trials, difficulties that you may be going through or that you may have been through, you or somebody else that you know, or that may be coming up, just keep turning up, man. Keep staying in the fight. Take one day at a time. Put one foot in front of the other. I promise you things can do and will get better. The sun will shine again. There are better days ahead, and those better days are closer than you think. So just stick at it. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.